was.
Welcome back. Tonight's theme is kidnapping. Not the kind you read about in newspapers and then set aside, the kind that stays with you. 3 accounts came to me recently, and I'll be honest, even I found these ones difficult to sit with. Let's begin. Sometimes the danger isn't sudden. Sometimes it builds slowly, one familiar detail at a time. This person noticed something they probably should have ignored. Here's what they told me. The car outside my apartment was parked facing the wrong direction, but the tire tracks in the snow only went forward. I noticed it on a Tuesday morning. Dark blue sedan, no plates on the front, windows tinted just past the legal limit. The paint was clean, almost deliberately so, like it had been washed recently despite the weather. I told myself someone had reversed badly into the space and then left on foot. That made sense. People do careless things with cars all the time. I went inside and made coffee and stood at my kitchen window looking down at it for longer than I should have, the mug warming my hands while the radiator clicked and groaned behind me. The street below was ordinary. Salt-stained pavement, gray morning light, a neighbor's cat picking its way along the curb. And that car, sitting wrong in a way I couldn't stop looking at. It was still there when I got home at 6:48 p.m. Still facing the wrong way. Still no front plate. The engine wasn't running. No one got in or out. I live on the 3rd floor of a building with one stairwell and no elevator, and my window looks directly onto that parking bay. I would have seen someone. I ate dinner at my kitchen table that night instead of the couch because from the table I could see the street. By Thursday it was gone. I felt a loosening in my chest that I hadn't noticed was tight. I remember exhaling slowly, rolling my shoulders back, almost laughing at myself for being unsettled by a badly parked car. Friday, I drove to the grocery store 4 blocks away, and it was there in the car park. Same space, same direction. I sat in my car for 11 minutes before I went inside. The heating was on, but I felt cold anyway. A specific kind of cold that starts somewhere behind the sternum. I kept my phone in my hand the whole time. When I came out with my bags, a piece of paper was tucked under my windshield wiper. No writing on the outside. I stood there in the cold with my bags cutting into my fingers, the plastic handles pressing white marks into my skin, and I thought about not opening it. I thought about getting in the car, driving away, pretending I hadn't seen it. Inside, printed in plain black text on white paper, was my name. Just my name. My full name, spelled correctly, which sounds like a small thing until you understand that it is hyphenated and unusual and most people get it wrong on the first try. Below my name was an address. It took me a few seconds to recognize it as my sister's house, 3 states away. I called the police that evening. They took a report. They said without a direct threat, there was little they could do. And they were not unkind about it, but they also did not seem to understand what I was trying to explain. That someone had been watching me long enough to know where I live, where I shop, and where my family is. They wanted me to know. That's all the note was. Every dark-colored car I saw on the street sent my stomach dropping before I could talk myself back down from it. All that rationalizing. The wrong tire tracks, the clean paint, the ordinary morning light, collapsing the moment I saw a shape that was almost right. I stopped sleeping properly. Entirely. The blue sedan appeared one more time, 6 days later outside my office building. I walked out of my job at 2:15 p.m., called my landlord from the pavement, broke my lease, and drove to my sister's house that same night. I did not see the car again after that, but when I arrived at my sister's, exhausted and barely holding it together, she met me at the door and told me that someone had rung her doorbell twice that afternoon. I had been driving for 9 hours. No one was there either time. I have never been able to make those 2 facts sit next to each other without my mind going somewhere I can't come back from easily. I don't know what they wanted. I don't know if it's finished. I still check every car park before I get out. The next story takes place not in a city, but somewhere far more isolated, where no one would hear you at all. Some roads are quiet for a reason. This next account involves a stretch of isolated ground, a vehicle, and a decision made in absolute darkness. This is their account. My hiking boot was still laced when I found it sitting upright in the middle of the trail, but my foot was cold and bare inside my sock. I have no memory of stopping, no memory of taking it off. I was alone on a fire road in the Cascades, 11 miles from the trailhead, and I had been walking for about 4 hours. The air up there had that specific dry, resinous smell of pine baking in late afternoon heat, and the trail itself was pale and chalky underfoot, edged with brittle grass that caught the light like copper wire. The boot was sitting neatly, toe pointed north, like someone had placed it there deliberately. I stood over it for a moment, trying to feel some recognition, some flicker of memory. Nothing came. I put it back on and kept moving. I told myself it was altitude, that I had been distracted and stopped without realizing, that bodies do strange things when they've been working hard for 4 hours at elevation. My water tasted faintly of something I couldn't name, metallic, but not quite. Sweeter than metal, almost chemical, sitting at the back of my throat after each swallow. I had filled the bottle from a marked tap at the trailhead, so I kept drinking. The light was still good, maybe 4:30 p.m. by the angle of it through the tree line, falling in long amber columns between the trunks and laying shadows across the trail that stretched east like fingers. The trail curved west, and then I heard something behind me. Not footsteps exactly, more like the sound of weight shifting on dry pine needles. Rhythmic, keeping pace. I stopped. It stopped. The silence that followed was absolute in a way that didn't feel natural. No birds, no wind moving through the upper branches, just a held, waiting kind of quiet that pressed against my ears. I walked faster. It walked faster. I turned around and the trail was empty for as far as I could see, which was about 60 feet before a bend. I stood very still and looked at that bend for a long time. My breathing was shallow. My hands had gone cold. Nothing came around it. I walked the remaining miles without stopping. I checked my feet twice, both boots on, both laced, both exactly as they should be. No fire, no campsite, no friendly strangers, just the trail and the sound of my own footfall and the sustained effort of not running. Somewhere in the last half mile, without registering when or how, I noticed my left foot had gone cold again. I looked down, sock only. The boot was gone. I hadn't stopped. I hadn't felt anything. I kept walking because I could not make myself slow down. When the trailhead parking lot finally appeared through the tree line, I felt something loosen in my chest that I hadn't known I was holding. My car was where I left it. Driver's side window down. I was certain I had closed it. I always close it. I stood in the empty lot and looked at it for a long time before I got in. On the hood, placed neatly side by side, were 2 boots. Both mine. Both laced. The one I had found on the trail 11 miles back, and the one that had been on my foot minutes ago. A ranger pulled into the lot maybe 20 minutes later, doing a routine check. I showed him the boots. I told him what had happened on the trail. He looked at them for a long time without speaking, and when he finally did, he didn't answer what I asked. He asked me which section of trail instead. Which bend. I told him. He wrote something down and then stopped writing and looked back toward the tree line. I asked him if this had happened before. He said, very carefully, that there was one report he kept thinking about. He started to tell me something about it and then stopped. Chose different words. Asked me instead whether I had noticed anything moved or rearranged when I wasn't looking. I didn't answer. He didn't finish. I still think about the silence after I stopped. How fast it came. How completely. And I think about whoever was close enough to take something off my foot without me ever once feeling their hands. What you just heard had an explanation, even if it was a terrifying one. What happened to me has never been explained at all. The final story is the one I keep returning to. Not because of what happened during those 4 days, but because of what was never fully explained. Make of it what you will. I walked into my house on Thursday. The calendar said Monday. I stood in the kitchen doorway with my coat still on, keys still in my hand, just staring at the little square around the 14th. I remember thinking someone had come in and flipped the pages as a joke, except no one had a key, and nothing else in the house felt touched. My phone was dead. When it charged, it confirmed the date, the 14th. I had left on the 10th. My shoes were clean, but my socks were not, and there was a smell on my jacket I still cannot describe accurately, somewhere between pine resin and something chemical, something that made the back of my throat tighten every time I breathed in too deeply. I draped the jacket over a chair, then moved it to the hallway, then finally sealed it in a bag because I could not stand having it in the same room. My car was in the driveway, which means I drove home. I have no memory of being in the car. What I could not explain then, and still cannot, was the notebook. It was sitting on my kitchen table, a plain black notebook I had never bought, never seen before, and every page was filled with my own handwriting. Not a journal entry, not sentences, just numbers, columns of them, running top to bottom on every page in the same looping hand I use when I am writing quickly. Some pages had been pressed so hard the pen had torn through. I did not recognize a single sequence. I have not shown it to anyone. I do not know why. I just have not. I sat at the kitchen table for a long time before I called anyone. The room was dark. I had not turned the lights on. I sat there in the gray of the late evening, listening to the refrigerator hum, trying to locate some feeling inside myself that made sense of what I was looking at. The first person I called was my mother, and she answered on the first ring and said my name in a way I'd never heard her say it. Like she'd been waiting. She told me she had filed a missing persons report on the 12th. 2 full days after I stopped answering my phone. My neighbors had confirmed my car was gone. The police had spoken to people I work with. There was a file with my name in it. I had been missing for 4 days, and I felt like I'd been gone for 3 hours. The doctors found nothing physically wrong with me. No injuries, no signs of anything that would explain the gap, no anomaly in my blood work. I remember sitting on the examination table under those flat white lights, waiting for the part where she said she'd found something, where there was at least a thread to pull. There was nothing. Just the careful, neutral voice of someone who had run out of boxes to tick. I have spoken to 3 people since then who specialize in what they call anomalous time loss. None of them have given me an answer I fully believe, but one of them said something that has stayed with me. She asked, very carefully, whether I had noticed anything unusual in the days before I disappeared. I had. For about a week before the 10th, I kept waking at exactly 3:44 a.m., fully alert, with the feeling that something in my room had just moved. I would lie still and listen, and there would be nothing. No sound from the street, no settling of walls, just the darkness and my own breathing, and that feeling pressed flat against my chest like a hand. I stopped mentioning it to people because there was nothing to describe. No sound, no shape, nothing displaced in the morning. Just the certainty, repeated every night for 7 nights, that I had been watched while I slept. I still wake at 3:44 a.m. sometimes. Not every night, but often enough that I check the date when it happens. Often enough that I check the notebook, too. The columns keep being the same, I think. 3 stories, different circumstances, different people, but a similar thread running through each one. That feeling of realizing, perhaps too late, that something is very wrong. Thank you for listening tonight. Stay safe out there. I'll see you next time.